Hi guys, so this is Mr. Tan, and today we're doing entrepreneurship, and we're doing P7. Now P7 says examine, using relevant examples, how background and experience can either foster or hinder entrepreneurship. So examine is a key word, and examine means to what? It's to explore into more detail and to investigate, okay? To explore and to investigate. And now looking at the question, what do you think that we need to do first in terms of looking at this question?
We need to give a definition of entrepreneurship.
Good. We first need to know, again, what do we mean by entrepreneurship? And what is entrepreneurship?
Entrepreneurship is the pursuit of the opportunity without regard to resources, currently controlled.
Yes, so there are many different definitions. One of the definitions that you've just said is the pursuit of opportunity without regard for resources or resources currently controlled. So, you know, that for me is kind of like the essence of the entrepreneurial spirit, that no matter what, that you see an opportunity, and even though you see the opportunity, you may not necessarily have all the resources or everything that you need to start it, but because of your entrepreneurial spirit and your attitudes, beliefs and intentions, you actually make an effort and determination to actually achieve your goal no matter what, okay? Because you've seen the opportunity, so you want to go for it, and you're not going to let anything stand in your way. And I think that is, for me, part of the entrepreneurial spirit. Okay, so once we've looked at a definition for what is entrepreneurship, what do we need to look at now?
Factors that hinder.
Yeah, we need to recap on P6 in terms of factors that hinder or foster entrepreneurial intent. Now, obviously we used the model from P6 and we don't want to re-explain the whole model again, but you want to recap on the model. You want to recap in terms of stating how various factors can foster or hinder entrepreneurial intention. And you start off by giving a summary. Excuse me, just making sure this is on. Yeah, giving a summary of the personal factors and the contextual factors that may affect someone. So what can be some of the personal factors that could affect someone?
Personal traits.
Personal traits, yes. What else?
And the geographic backgrounds.
Geographic backgrounds, religion, friends, family, social groups, peer groups. And what about the contextual factors?
We're talking about the
social, economic, political, situational type, environmental type factors that could affect you, and what's actually affecting you at that time. Okay, so these factors kind of have an influence on what?
On attitude.
Yeah, and I know that you mentioned attitudes, and I know that in the model it links straight into perceptions, but really perceptions are basically people's beliefs. But before we actually get to perceptions, I would argue that it really has influences that individual's attitude, and then the attitude is linked to someone's perception. And then from perception, what's going to be the influencing factors after perception? You've got moderating factors, you've got personal moderating factors, and contextual moderating factors. Come in quickly, please. So you've got these two different types of factors, and personal moderating factors include things such as training. Do you have the skills to actually do this entrepreneurial venture? And contextual moderating factors includes resources. Do you actually have the finances to actually start this project and to finish it? Yeah, and then let's say you had those, then that leads into intention, entrepreneurial intention, and then from entrepreneurial intention, entrepreneurial action, to take action. So you don't want to go through this whole model again, but you want to briefly outline it and explain it in terms of personal factors and contextual factors affecting the person's attitudes, beliefs or perception. And then before you get to intention, you get the contextual factors, both personal and moderating contextual factors that affect someone's intention, whether or not they're going to go ahead and take action. Okay? So once you've explained that, then what do we need to do? What do we need to do then?
You don't need to give example.
Yeah, we need to now to talk about some examples, relevant examples, because remember the question says relevant examples of maybe successful entrepreneurs and how their background and experiences and their social factors have actually affected them. So if we look at, say, for instance, Oprah Winfrey's, what is Oprah Winfrey's background? Yeah, it was very, very personal. It had personal factors affecting Oprah Winfrey's attitude. You know, she was sexually abused as a young child. She had a child, and she lost the child at the age of 14. And all of this kind of shaped and developed what was happening in her personal life, shaped and developed her. And she is a very compassionate, very caring, very sincere person. And that's the way she comes across. And she's able to connect with people and understand people and associate with what they're associating with. And that came across in her show in 1978 with the Oprah Winfrey Show. So we can see that we had personal factors affecting Oprah Winfrey's, which shaped her attitudes, beliefs and intentions. And then what other moderating factors affected Oprah Winfrey's? Well, she had the opportunity. So the contextual moderating factors were the opportunity and the resources to start the show. And she had the skills and the ability to actually do that talk show, which led to the entrepreneurial intention and thus the entrepreneurial action in terms of the Oprah Winfrey Show. Okay? Do you see how we've linked it back to the factors which have actually helped her or what she's experienced in her own life? But we've linked it back to the model, okay? Now, what about Bill Gates? How has Bill Gates' background and culture and experience helped or hindered him?
Personal traits, sorry.
Personal traits. So, what were some of his personal traits?
Intelligence in the computerized.
Yes, intelligence in and studying computers and coding. And the coding which he studied, even from the age of 13, he was into coding. When he was growing up, he went to Harvard University and he was building systems and software. So he was always into that. So we can see his background in terms of his skills and his knowledge and his intelligence in terms of the personal factors led him into shaping his attitudes and his perceptions and his beliefs in terms of what he felt was important for him. But what other moderating factors affected him? We know that IBM had commissioned Bill Gates to produce some software for their hardware systems. And we know that at that time, Bill Gates or IBM should have got Bill Gates to sign a confidentiality agreement and intellectual property rights agreement on the software he was writing, so the software would have belonged to IBM. But that wasn't the case. For some unknown reason, there was a mistake, and IBM didn't get Bill Gates to actually sign that intellectual property rights agreement belonging to IBM. So therefore, once he had created the software, that software had now belonged to Bill Gates. And what did he go on to create? Microsoft and all the software. And the software became more powerful than the hardware, than the actual systems itself. And so eventually Microsoft grew to such a stage where it was bigger than IBM. But we can see that in the moderating factors, one, he had the skills, and in the moderating contextual factors, in terms of influencing entrepreneurial intention, he had timing was right, and he was fortunate, and he had a great deal of luck at that time for them not actually doing that, which led him to the entrepreneurial intention and therefore entrepreneurial action in terms of setting up and developing and launching his own software, okay, which really would have belonged to IBM, but now belonged to him, okay? But can you see how the factors that have affected him in his life has affected his entrepreneurial action? Yes? Okay, what about Thomas Edison? Who was Thomas Edison?
light bulb in America?
Yeah. Thomas Edison created the light bulb, and as we know with Thomas Edison, supposedly he had carried out 2,500 experiments, and in those 2,500 experiments he had failed, and then a reporter came to him and said, "Mr. Edison, why do you continue with these experiments when you know that the gas was supposed to be lit by gasoline?" And supposedly Thomas Edison said, "Well, my son, I have successfully identified 2,500 ways of how not to do it. Therefore, I've identified 2,500 ways of not doing it." He then went on to do another 2,500 experiments, 5,000 experiments in total, before he invented the light bulb. But what kind of traits did he have? What traits did he have?
The belief and the passion.
The passion, but the determination and the persistence to keep going. And no matter how many he got wrong, he would still keep going because he believed in himself. And when we look at Thomas Edison, we can say, well, what kind of factors shaped his attitude? What gave him this determination? What was his background? What was his personal factors that shaped his attitude growing up?
The personal.
Yes. What were some of the personal factors?
That he was sick.
He was very ill. He was very sick. He had scarlet fever or some fever when he was young, and he was lucky to survive. He was hit by a train, and he was lucky to survive. And he was a very poorly child, and his parents probably didn't think he was going to survive, but he did. And that kind of like survival changes your attitude. That changes your attitude in terms of your way of thinking. People who've had near-death experiences change their attitudes and their way of thinking in terms of a zest and want to live life and do the things that they want to do. In fact, Thomas Edison created many inventions. But as the many inventions that he created, he also created many failures. But the point is, his personal factors led him to his attitude and his perception. And at the right time, his timing and resources, and he had the resources and the skills in terms of first developing what did he first develop? Do you know?
Bomb.
Yeah, so if we look back at Thomas Edison, his first taste of glory came, when he developed a tin foil phonograph. After working as a telegraph operator, he wanted to create a way of making a telegraph transmitter to work in a more efficient way. Do you understand? So he was always thinking, he was always creative, he was always an ideas person. And he had many inventions. So this type of personality led him to keep on trying no matter what, no matter how many times he failed. And even if you look at many failures of many business people, most millionaires who are now billionaires now have failed countless times before they became billionaires, because they have had the determination and persistence, and they've learned from what they've known in terms of their failures. Okay, so now we've looked at Thomas Edison, we've looked at Oprah Winfrey, so we looked at Bill Gates. There are other examples here, but you link that back to personal and contextual factors that affects your attitudes and perceptions or your beliefs, and that then is affected by the moderating personal and contextual factors, which lead to entrepreneurial intention, which leads to entrepreneurial action. Okay, so after we've done this, have we answered the question?
Yes.
No, not quite. We haven't finished the question, because we've looked at the factors which can foster entrepreneurship, but we haven't looked at the factors that can hinder entrepreneurship. Well, we've got some facts and figures here, and we know that when we look at businesses in general, we know that when businesses start up, 20% of businesses that start up, according to government statistics, fail in the first year. And then the businesses that are left, 30% of the businesses that are left in the second year fail. And then from those businesses that are left, 50% of those businesses fail in the fifth year. And then finally, what we also know is that from those businesses that are left, in the 10th year,